Wait.
Good afternoon. Being that the hour of 5 p.m. has arrived on Wednesday, October 9th, 2024, the Public Safety and Licensing Committee is officially called to order. Our first order of business will be the approval of the minutes for the September 25th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, comments? I'll repeat, any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. I want to point out a couple of things here. I see we have guests in the audience. If you're here, you can speak to a specific item that's on the agenda. You will have 3 minutes. Please sign up. If it's not an agenda item, please share it with the full city council. And please do not only address the committee, not the other members in the room, please. Okay, our first order of business is item 0896-24, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason to adopt ordinance number 0007-24, mobile food establishment hours of operation. Is there anyone to speak to that item?
I believe the chief is here.
Chief, please come forward.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, committee members. I'm here to speak in regards to the hours of operation for the food truck ordinance. We currently don't have a food truck ordinance. I think this is the beginning of something. I'm all in favor of food trucks. I know we have a limited number here in the city of Racine, but I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of restaurants having food trucks. I'm all in favor of that. What I don't see is that they have hours of operation. I know in other municipalities like Milwaukee has an hours of operations from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can get the vendor's permit that goes for nighttime hours. We don't have anything like that set up here. But the reason why I want to speak about food trucks in and of itself, I'll speak for the downtown area. We've had 2 food trucks over the last 3 years. One food truck mainly, 2 and more recently in the downtown area for the last, I've been here over 3 years. With me, I brought the numbers of calls for service that we've had here. We've had 32 calls for service in the 7th and Park area, 6th and Park area over the last 90 days. We've also had a double shooting that happened at 3:47 in the morning about a food truck. Let me backtrack a little bit here. I'll get into that in a little bit. My number 1 priority is public safety. My other priority is, I think, the basic mission of the police department, and why they exist, is the prevention of crime and disorder. I know that my experience here around these food trucks, especially in the downtown area, we've had a lot of disorderly conduct, a lot of quality of life violations, a lot of traffic violations. We've had fights, we've had shots fired, and it's caused a disruption of downtown. It created a perception of people don't want to come downtown because it's fear. Back in this is just something that happened at a food truck in Appleton, Wisconsin, but it has ties to Racine. It was right around Christmas time. I believe it was December 24th. There was a food truck out in Appleton, Wisconsin, selling food after bar time. Well, somebody cut in line. And there was an argument that started, and then the person that the argument they had with came up and shot the guy in the back of the head and killed him. Well, the suspect was from Racine. we ended up catching them a couple of days later. We helped Appleton PD with that investigation, and we brought that person to arrest. Started looking into this further. Milwaukee had a number of instances similar like that too, where there are fights and disorderly conduct. Basic mission of the police department, of course, is to, prevent crime and to, obviously reduce any kind of disorderly behavior. But because of that, again, I'm not against food trucks or anything like that. I use them, but they should have some sort of hours of operation. There's none right now in any ordinance on it. They can run 24 hours a day, either on private or public land. So this is my reasoning behind that. I think you should seriously consider the proposed hours of operation. I'm willing to answer any questions about that.
Committee?
I guess
Yes.
I'll start. So I'm looking at, I saw there was two different versions here?
No, so there's one version, and then there's the agenda briefing memorandum, which is,
Okay. So I'm seeing that hours are, no hours between midnight and 6, so is this kind of like a starting point?
That's correct. It'd be a starting point to expand the food truck ordinance. You'll get the vendor's permit. The health department does do its yearly checks, I think once a year on them. And just another thing, we also have food trucks that come in from out of town to come here because of that. Because we don't have an ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know years ago, we tried to get some sort of ordinance set up, and there was no consensus at all. But over the last couple of years, I've been listening to a lot of people talk about the food trucks issues, and especially the after-hour thing. And we need to have something in place, and I think this is a good starting point. We can't be policing people all the time like this, and it just seems like when you get people after bar time, it gets a little crazy. So when did this shooting happen, Chief?
It had to be about 6-7 weeks ago. But let me also add that I have a safe van parked on 7th and Park because of the disorderly behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a camera up there. I put police officers on 6th and Park and 7th and Park on the weekends because of the disorderly behavior that happens there. I know that the food truck does draw people from other places because they're open after hours. And that's how we get the whole number of people that's in those areas causing all kinds of problems, drinking, disorderly behavior, quality of life issues, which has caused police response, largely police response at times.
I would also suspect that it causes the bars in that area additional burden on them in terms of protecting the public, because other people are coming, they've closed, and now you have dozens of other people from other closed bars, so it becomes a hangout, which becomes a nuisance.
Almost like an attractive nuisance.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you. No, that's all right. I've been thinking about this, and I have some questions. So is this, you believe, there's a correlation between bar close and the food trucks?
Yes.
Was that kind of the insinuation?
I think that's my inference on that, yeah.
I have a problem with shutting down a whole sector and of a local economy, like not a proportionate response, I think, to the issue. I think there's like a misplacement, because if it's a public safety concern, I mean, you're here, we have the chief of police before us to talk on food trucks, so it's a public safety concern. So I don't want to discredit what you're saying, because I think we have to take in consideration when the police are coming to us, because they're trying to find a solution to what's going on. But I just think removing food options might actually, cause like we're kind of deflecting where the problem truly lies. And if it has something to do, why, if it's because after bar close, that's the problem. You have a whole move a mass of, population moving to an area, causing a ruckus. I think addressing what's happening after those bar closes, right? Having access to food, I think is important, for many levels. I am curious, though, you made a statement about a vendor's license that's maybe in Milwaukee that's for after hours. Could you speak a little bit on?
It's a vendor's permit that allows nightly time operations of food trucks in the city of Milwaukee. Normally, their hours are from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can get a vendor's permit, I don't know what they cost or anything like that, but you can apply for a vendor's permit to have that.
But do you know anything about that, what entails them to be able to get approved for a vendor's permit
I do not.
after hours or something like that? I also want to ask you, would the nuisance property apply, that ordinance apply to if we had a specific food truck that was causing a lot of concerns? Can you inflict that ordinance?
Yeah, we've been exploring that because we have a food trailer and a food truck. The one food truck we can because it's an extension of the business. This particular food trailer that has caused us some challenges, it's a trailer, so it's not an establishment. We're trying to get some language. We're working on it right now to see if we can get a nuisance, have a nuisance abatement plan attached to it, but the way it's written, it's not right now.
So I think we're onto something right there. I truly do. I think perhaps strengthening that nuisance ordinance, and more strictly enforcing that ordinance could address the true problem instead of restricting access to food. You know, I know, maybe the easy thing to do is shut it all down. You know, so what, we shut the whole city down to address this one problem in a sense? I think addressing the problem, I see how you're looking at me. You're like, gosh, dang it, we want a solution, to address this right away. But I think it just shifts the problem instead of addressing the problem. So I like the idea of strengthening the nuisance ordinance to be able to address the problem. So if it is truly a food truck, say there's some correlation between an owner of a food truck with a body of people who cause ruckus, they need to be accountable for that. But when you have reputable businesses who truly believe in servicing, our population of people don't just work 9 to 5. We have people who work third shift, people who get out in second shift, and families for whatever reason need access to food at different hours, right? So I think if we're moving in a time of growth and having attraction to our community, I've traveled all around the world, right? And I've traveled to many places within the nation and outside. And I'm going to tell you, the things that always stand out to me is having access at all hours, right? When there's life, not just during daylight hours. So, but how do we do it safely? So I hear there's a safety concern, but we have to find a way to do it safely. So my thoughts really is to take a look at that nuisance ordinance and see if we can strengthen that language rather than shut down access to food from 12 to 6.
Just looking at hours of operation here.
Right. Well, that, with the hours of operations, would stop the operations from midnight to 6 a.m.
Correct.
So I'm saying it different, but it's coming up with it means the same.
Yes, sir.
I think instead of just looking at that, I think if you look back, there's been many restaurants, many gas stations throughout the city that have been open, some 24 hours. And if you look back, the issues have always been after bar time. And I don't think it's necessarily directed towards those food trucks in general. I think if there were any food trucks down there, that would be, because it's attracting the crowd at that particular point. And the problem is that they're going there after the bar. And it's many, many people coming from many different areas through there,
Yeah.
which oftentimes creates an issue when you get people from the north side of town and the south side of town. They look at each other cross-eyed, and then all of a sudden you have an issue. I don't think personally that midnight is, hearing him say 9 p.m. before, I thought that was a little, but I think midnight is plausible for people to go down there. And quite honestly, I don't see a lot of people going down there at 3 o'clock in the morning for food that aren't going down there for possibly other reasons.
Yes.
So just in a response, I really appreciate that, and I almost feel like that it could be construed as I'm gonna be speaking out of both sides of my mouth if you've followed my spiel on here for other various things, because I believe there's a responsibility in the liquor establishment that after bar close and there's a crowd that lingers there, and I am a believer of that crowd is there, you've served them alcohol, you were there, that you have a responsibility that goes on outside. Other people have different beliefs, but I'm a believer that you've attracted that. But in this instance, I don't believe the food truck, in a sense, is the one who should be having these level of restrictions or, you know, I don't want to say a penalty, but I'm just going to throw that word out there. It might be a bit extreme, but, you know, the people are the ones who have to be accountable. The people are the problem. It's not the food truck that's the problem, but yet we're restricting the food truck and we're just shifting the people. And I hear you, and I believe you. I take what you say 100% that the things that are after hours or 24 hours, that's where the congregation of people wind up and end up, and that's where the problem exists.
And many of those places don't do the any longer for that particular reason.
And, right, and that was a business decision, right? A business decision because it was, yeah, you know, I can think of a couple places, and I remember just the havoc that people caused on those places. But then I'm like, well, then let the business trucks decide that and not let us decide that, right? Just like those businesses shut down. You know, I don't want it to come off that I'm not hearing, you know, what's going on and that your staff or your individual's public safety is not having this concern. I mean, you're here before us because there's a concern. I just hate to penalize the people that aren't the ones in my belief because they exist and they're providing food. We're saying you're the problem and we're going to restrict you, but it's the people that are the problem. So, you know, if it is the food truck, they need to be accountable. I believe in accountability, but that's where that nuisance ordinance comes into play. But then how do you stop this shifting of crowds going to these establishments after hours? You know, I'm sure there's got to be some data. I would even like to see some data on, you know, I don't know, data sometimes speaks, data sometimes drives, you know, I don't know, on these food trucks, the problems, specific ones. You know, I'm sure there's something you could pull up for calls of service to certain. Is it the location or is it the food truck? Is it that food truck at that location? You know, are these, you said these food trucks move around from private to public property, right? So, you know.
Well, if I can, regarding nuisance, I think we do make it a nuisance. When you got 33 calls, they certainly would have gotten not only the
Yeah,
citations for each call,
right.
but also would have gotten a fee for each officer there. So who's getting it? The owner.
Yeah,
Responsibility of the owner. You have good businesses that have no problems, they run with no issues at all. Falls on the owner of, whether it's a food truck or a business or any kind of business staff.
but don't you sift through the calls? Like, you know, if
Look at
it's,
it, yes.
so, I mean, you're not gonna slap them, with something that, just because the crowd was there, but if they're responsible, if their actions are creating the nuisance, they're the ones who are gonna get fined. Fine them, and keep fining them, and I think then they should be responsible. But if it's the people coming from all over, as you stated,
Well, people come from different areas, but if it's a responsible owner, he knows how to control. He spoke here, I believe, a couple of weeks ago.
yeah.
For that particular one, but I'm talking about the food trucks in general throughout the
Yeah.
city.
Don't we have 100 new staff members that work in, I'm being exaggerating, but in communication and public awareness and outreach? Man, this sounds like something that we could really bring out. If that, you're saying there is a responsible food truck, let's find out their best practices to start, you know, we have good neighbor report or good neighbor meetings. This could be part of a good neighbor meeting. We don't do good neighbor meetings for food trucks because we don't have a food truck ordinance, but maybe this is something that we can start inflicting, because every person who applies for a food truck maybe should go through a good neighbors. It's got to be called something else because they're in every neighbor. Or maybe it could be called that. But anyways, Now we're in my head too much, I'll stop.
Alder,
You know, I'm looking at a little bit different way, you know, like a bar and stuff, we got an address, and if there's a problem. But that food truck could be on this street today and this street tomorrow. There is no address there. And absence of, any kind of food truck ordinance, I think at least this should be something we should enact and maybe move forward with something to get an ordinance moving. But all I know is I've been getting calls from different people about these things, and it's problematic, and it's always after hours, sometimes 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And, I mean, just like the same thing with the bars. If the bar wasn't there, that wouldn't be a problem. But we have this, and I think we have to move forward, yeah, if nothing else, at least temporarily with something to get something moving. I know they tried to do an ordinance, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, there was no consensus whatsoever. And that's why we don't have anything, and that's why, to me, this is a good place to start.
I tend to agree with both sides of this, but going back to what the chief said and something I mentioned earlier, if the truck wasn't there, the people wouldn't be there, but the people are gonna go where their friends are. They might go because of food, but they also go for other items as well. So I have to also agree with what Alder Cole just said. Their people are going with the food truck. If they're on, I don't know, 12th and College, that's where they're gonna be. If they're on 6th Street, right over by Pepe's, because Pepe's is closed, that's where the problem is going to be. So, those are my comments. So, are there any other, yes?
I have a couple of questions. So, let's just hypothetically say this is in place and they shut down at midnight, but the crowd is still there and the bar is closed. Now what do we do?
You enforce it at midnight. When it's done.
Right, but the crowd's still there. Like, it's a hypothetical. Now what do we do?
Well, the crowd's acting disorderly, gotta move on. We do our best to move people on, you know, it's just, sometimes we end up stopped, sometimes they scatter. All the time.
Because these crowds seem to gather, whether it's in, you know, Alder Davis's district in the parking lot, or if it's on 6th Street, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I know we need extra tools in our tool belt to, you know, be able to help with some of these problems, but I'm, you know, just trying to throw that out there that, sometimes I just think, you know, I spoke with, the firefighters and I don't know what the crowd sizes are, but they expressed to me that it was concerning that they had to try to go into the middle of what they felt like at the moment was hundreds of people to put this guy on a stretcher and get the heck out of there as fast as they could. So truly it is a problem. I think we need some sort of a procedure or structure in place to help enforcement, absolutely, but I'm not really sure. I mean, because the crowds are gonna gather no matter what. I mean, back in the day, we used to gather down by the lake and they used to drag race. So, I mean, people are gonna gather where they're gonna gather. That's my 2 cents, so.
Thank you.
No, Olivia.
Vic,
Oh,
Vic, one more time,
Yes, please.
sorry. I think there's a direct correlation there. If it's a crowd, no matter where it's at, we're gonna use crowd management just like we would for anything else, regardless of wherever it is. I think if you look back, like the chief said, there's direct correlation with the number and percentage of calls that you're going to that are related to that specific area and that specific place being open at that particular time frame.
Alder Davis?
We have had crowds in
Okay.
other places, yes, absolutely. There's one in here actually for, Sportsville, I believe it is. But the owner called, the bartender called us, asked us to go over there and make them all, and that's what we did. If you look at the number of calls for that particular sort of thing, crowd versus the crowd there, I think it's a much higher ratio for that than it is versus other places. And you run into the same thing at Speedway, for instance. Speedway used to be a gigantic problem back in the day up on Washington in Ohio because they were open and everybody went there after the bar. I worked there off duty many, many weekends, years, and there was a direct correlation of the time frame that they were open to the problems that were being caused. And I think that's part of the issue, that its time frame is, I think, personally more of the issue than the truck itself. I think it would be beneficial to have it stop at midnight.
Alder Davis?
Thank you. Thank you, Arthur P. Couple things here that I want to mention. First, I want to go back to where you're speaking of, there is, people will gather, whether you have the food truck, people gathered at the beach, people gathered at Speedway. The issue is crowd management. The issue is public safety, and it's during these hours. So if we close an establishment between 12 and 6, what I'm hearing is there's still going to be people gathering at some point, at some place, at some time. So how do we go back to the point of, with law enforcement working with ensuring that they're safe, it's safe, it's public safety, is ensured there. So when we talk about the numbers are low within law enforcement, we don't have all the officers. Maybe we need to work on still more power in recruiting those officers and putting officers on third shift if that's an issue. Us limiting small businesses because of issues that will move around is not the answer. I want to go back to something Arthur Caprillion mentioned, a nuisance, about the nuisance, and Chief spoke on this as well, us looking more into a nuisance ordinance. Yes, folks the food truck will move around, but it's on the food truck. If it's a nuisance at the next fire, it's on the food truck. So let's look into that there. We should not be limiting food access in a community where it's a food desert. That's not the answer. We should not be trying to limit individuals that are small business owners because of these issues here. How do we all work together to create public safety and create access to food? It's really, and what I'm hearing is some of it is a specific truck. The reason why this ordinance came about, a specific truck. That's not okay. Let's address and figure out how we can fix this. Let's sit down with this individual. Let's talk about this. Let's bring in the Department of Community Safety if it's an issue with North Side and South Side. It's about bringing folks to the table. It's not about taking table and food away from folks. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I forgot about that Department of Community Safety. Boy, does this sound like something that should be right on this, Department of Community Safety for a community safety concern. I think maybe at this time, based on the information, it's only based on the information I have, and I'm hearing what's coming at us from the police department and to try to solve a public safety concern. I think we're focusing too broadly rather than just on the issue. So I would love maybe possibly the action be a deferment to kind of pause this current proposal and to explore a more targeted solution. I think we should examine our existing nuisance ordinance, just like you had mentioned, and let's try to strengthen that a little bit. And I would love to find out more, and maybe here's the happy medium, is to explore that vendor's permit. I want to read, if it's from Milwaukee, you said they have it in Milwaukee, because I think what would be a good idea with that, and even past the 12 to 6 as being proposed this evening, but what would be great about that, it's an opportunity for them to have the Good Neighbors meeting for establish best practices, and it's our way to create this relationship with the food trucks, because right now, the only way we have it here on this committee is if they're selling alcohol, right? If it's not them in particular, but liquor establishments. And I think massage parlors. But I think, so finding out a little bit more of that, I might then be able to put my name to this ordinance that's proposed to us this evening but then offering up this vendor permit that allows you then to work, I'm assuming, between the hours of 12 and 6. That would be my assumption, what Milwaukee does. So I would make a motion to defer.
I have a motion to defer. Is there a second?
Second.
Any opposed?
Yeah.
I oppose, so we're deadlocked. Motion fails. We're back to the original motion. Is there a motion to approve item number 089624?
I'll move.
Is there a second? I will second, and I assume you two are still opposed? So again, we're deadlocked.
Oh, wait, I didn't say anything yet.
Oh,
Can we?
What I was asking.
Yeah. Are we able to approve it with like a contingency to where we could add that, what she was saying about adding the option of making them accountable where they'd have to come to the committee to get approved for some type of a nighttime license? So they're part of this committee?
The short answer is no. So I think what all this is bringing is having some vendor's permit that allows a food truck to operate once they receive a permit license from the city of Racine. And that's what that same ordinance came in front of this committee back in 2019, and that was the one. So this is the very different ordinance that just restricts the hours without requiring them to get a license or a permit. So if you wanted to propose an ordinance where you require each food vendor to obtain a license, mobile food establishment, you could do that, and we would draft that ordinance, but that would be an entirely separate arrangement, and be related to, there's no way to add the two of them at this stage.
What I would say to that, I'm not open to the idea of having them to have to pay a permit fee, except possibly, that sounds like there is, between the hours of 12 and 6, there is stress on the police department. So they're utilizing more of the services of the police department. So I wouldn't be opposed of a permit fee for the hours of 12 to 6, but not an overall fee for a truck, if that makes sense, right? So if you want to operate during those times, maybe you're taking more of a, a business risk, if you will, and the police department does say that it is a high volume time of calls and incidences that occur, that congregate on things that are open between those hours, and because of that, we're utilizing more public services, so now we have a permit fee. I don't think that's appropriate for the item tonight. I think that's why a deferment would need to be had, so we can explore those options. By adding that on, I'm spitting this out almost as a knee-jerk thing. I would like to have some more thought in it. I would like to research more on Milwaukee's practices and others before I can even get behind what I'm even saying. So that's why I'm asking for the deferment.
That motion was deadlocked. Now we're back to the original motion.
I'll just tell you to go back to your question. If you wanted to incorporate that idea that Alder Caproni raised, and then adding a permit fee between those hours, then the appropriate motion would be her, would then draft the changes, and then would, that's something.
Which can then always be denied at the next meeting, but it would allow for time to explore that.
I'm good with that.
I think right now the motion on the floor is to approve as is with the second.
Yes.
And then and I'm a no on that.
If I say no, we can.
We'll be tied
If you
again.
say no, then you would have to make another motion.
Okay, so no, and then I'd like to make a motion for,
No, we have to finish this one first before you next.
You guys both said yes, and she said no.
Oh, you said, I didn't hear that.
yeah,
Okay. There's no further discussion. Motion to approve 089624. sales. Okay, Alder Kelly?
Okay, so, as you had stated, a motion to approve with that contingency to
Need a motion to
Defer.
defer so that the ordinance can be
Can we
amended,
amend
add
it,
a permit fee in those hours.
yes, after hours permit fee.
Second,
Just a
Just
second.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
second.
Okay.
I just, so, all of these people have to have permits right now, am I correct, to operate food trucks, and do we check on them?
They get a hawker peddler. And the usual health department license for operating a restaurant, even if it's mobile.
But they have to have something, they don't have something from the health of all these permits, they don't get it anyway. Am I-
But so any mobile food establishment is regulated by the state and it's enforced through the local health department, so they still need to be licensed as a restaurant.
I gotta ask the chief, when you guys go to these trucks, do you guys ask to see their permits?
No.
I'm curious to see, if they all have their,
We work with the health department on this, and this particular one we're talking about, does have their permit. There are others that come in from outside the city that you still have to have your, those peddlers permit, if you come in from outside the city. But they're a little different, hard to regulate, because that who's from where, you know.
and I don't think, I mean, if you guys are looking at doing something like this, I don't think it needs to be from 12 to 6. And if we have to get a special fee, I guess I'd make it a pretty good fee, just put more of the onus on them. So, I mean, I don't know what kind of fee schedule you're talking about here, but if they're really gonna, if people are gonna be for this, I think the fee needs to be up there to put it on the people that run the food trucks.
I will say, as I'm thinking out loud here, in order to impose a fee on California,
Or after hours.
likely way to do that is to require them to get essentially a vendor's license for the hours of midnight to 6 a.m. and then require them to pay a fee when they apply for that license. That would be the way that I would draft it, just kind of for clarification.
I was just doing some looking, and Madison has a structure that they newly put into place, and they actually have like a site map where people can be, I mean, obviously that's a little more restrictive, but that might be something to look at.
The State Street night vending license.
I guess, since you guys are proposing something like this, would, we have to give, I think there should be something that they would have to give the health department or the city where they're going to be.
I don't know the current restrictions on food trucks, I don't know
There
if,
is none,
oh,
there's nothing. That's why we're here once again. 5 years ago, we tried to do something, and then nothing was done, and that's why I wanted to put this in place for now, and we can work on, this midnight thing now and work on something and change it, but at least get something moving forward. Otherwise, this thing is gonna languish just like the last one did.
so currently, right now, we have a motion on the floor to accept to defer the ordinance as is, but by including the exploration of a fee for, the 12 to 6 hours, an additional permit obtainment. Is there any more discussion on that motion?
Not comfortable with that right now, just because we're still gonna have the problems and how long this is gonna take.
Is there any other additional discussion on the motion? If not, I'm gonna call it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No,
Motion passes. All right, the next thing on the agenda is, item 0664-24, communications sponsored by Alder Pete on behalf of the city clerk's office, submitting a new application for a Class B retail fermented malt beverage and intoxicating liquor license for Day 10 Bar and Grill, known, otherwise as Day 10 Bar and Grill, located 1102 Mound Avenue. Okay. Lacey Gianna, agent, District 8. Is that it?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for coming forward. Attorney Arn, would you please swear the applicant in?
Can you raise your hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
Okay. You're here today because you're applying for a license, correct?
Correct.
Tell us, we call it a business plan. Exactly what do you plan to do, hours of operation? I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. How are you going to operate it? Start there. Again, because you may have heard part of it, figured out part of it from some of the comments that have already been made. We have to be concerned with public safety and to understand exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to run your business, knowing what issues the community, your neighbors, or the bar's neighbors have to be concerned with. So I'll start there.
All right, so I plan to have the hours to be 12 to 2. And the reason being starting at 12 is to sell lunch because I will have a kitchen there. I plan to offer a chill lounge for family to eat and, have a good time. I also am planning to have I haven't really decided, either 25 or 30 up, just because to avoid the young crowd. As far as like safety afterwards, it comes to a point where it has to be closed down early, obviously stop selling at 1:30. Also, if there's like any crowds or anything like that, of course I will enforce the law enforcement if, the crowd is too big or anything like that.
What type of experience do you have running both food and a bar, or bar in particular, because that...
So I've previously have been a bartender, so I have experience with that. I also have worked in food service before, a manager of a food establishment. I have multiple different experiences just with the community.
Okay, I was just on Mound Avenue, right past your place today, with the road construction. Even if there wasn't, there's still any parking. There's no parking places. How would you address that issue?
Well, in the area, I believe there is some other parking options that we can use, whether it's across from Mound towards the church, the street over there. I'm not sure how long construction's gonna go on.
No, I'm just concerned about the parking, even
yes.
when it's not there. That's one of my concerns.
I understand. There's other options in the area.
Yes. I got you. Okay.
Okay. Are you aware of the previous nuisance of that establishment, that area, prior to, you taking on this application?
I don't know anything about them, no.
Not about them, but the history of the establishments in that area.
Not really.
So, thank you for your honesty in that. We have found, and, I think during a couple of our meetings ago, and this is where we really, I think, have to come down as a committee, because as somebody wanting to take on such a huge responsibility, when you're working with liquor, it is a privilege. And, it means you really have to do your historical due diligence, because then you know, as a business owner, what you may be facing to come. Sometimes it doesn't matter, in a sense, if you decide to paint the interior or bring different food, right? There tends to be a culture in an area or whatever it may be, but as a business owner, you've got to thoroughly do your due diligence to bring the best practices forward and address whatever may come. This area has a long history of nuisance in there. Not to say that's on your back, but it's in that building. It's historically in that. The neighbors already have this ingrained within their history of that neighborhood. So there's some trauma in that neighborhood because of what took place. Again, it's not on you, but you need to be aware of the history so you know how to address it with a good business plan. And if you're not aware, I can't accept the business plan that you're going to propose until you do become aware and you can address how you're going to handle it by going into a spot that has a history of nuisance and, just to go in kind of blind in a way, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but to go in there with, this innocence, I think you're going to end up in a position where you're going to have to be DeForest in defense, or you're going to be in a position where you need help, extreme a lot of help, and your business ends up failing because you weren't prepared before going into it. So, with that, I do, as Alderman Cole stated, want to hear, there was a good neighbors report, so I will want to hear that, but just so you understand my position on that.
Going along with that, I have a question. Because this has to do with state law, who actually owns the business?
The building?
No, who's gonna actually own, the
Jason,
bar?
myself.
Did you have a question yet?
Oh, we don't
All
wanna
right.
hear from the good neighbors.
Could we have the good
PD.
neighbors report and the PD report, please?
Thank you, committee members. So I met with, Ms. Lacy last week, for a Good Neighbors meeting. We discussed one of several things. I did want to point out to the committee that, I did ask Ms. Lacy when I was setting up the Good Neighbors meeting with her, who the owner was. At that time, she said it was Mr. Turner. And then she told me later on that it was actually herself. When I met her during the Good Neighbors meeting, we talked about the fact that that is prohibited by state law, a straw man application. And I did want to point out to the committee that prior to Ms. Lacy applying, there was a different gentleman, Raymond Turner. He, I believe, is the landlord. He came in previous to Ms. Lacy being involved. He came in with a person named Amaya Neal, requesting an alcohol beverage license. Ms. Neal then submitted an application in her name under Day 10, 10 as in Day 10 Lounge, so TEN. She submitted an entire application. Shortly thereafter, she withdrew her application. She backed out of the process. Mr. Turner then came in with Ms. Lacy several weeks later. Ms. Lacy then applied under Day 10 Bar and Grill, this time 10 with the number 10, and listed herself again as the sole owner and agent, just as the previous applicant did. Mr. Turner is nowhere on the paperwork. However, when you compare the two applications, they're almost identical. The handwriting is identical, the wording is almost identical on every question. So that's a little suspicious that perhaps it wasn't filled out by different people. I did ask Ms. Lacy about it. She states that she has never met Ms. Neal, so they don't have any relationship with one another. So she doesn't know why that application would match the previous application. So it doesn't appear that Mr. Turner is anywhere in the paperwork. He's not listed as the owner. He states that he is the landlord. However, if you look up on the city's website, it's still owned by Fidelis Wagner, who is the previous landlord. Maybe there's a lease agreement in place, but certainly he's not the landlord that's on paper with the city as of right now. So if Mr. Turner is the true owner, and in this case it looks like he may perhaps have a role in that, he would have to apply in his name for an alcohol beverage. Every alcohol beverage license issued by the city in the state of Wisconsin has to be issued in the actual owner's name. We also discussed management experience. Ms. Lacy is currently working as a CNA. She's working full-time. She plans to continue doing that even while she manages this establishment here. She indicates that she does have about 2.5 years of bartending and serving at Juby's, I believe. But she's never had a license in her own name before to manage a place. She does have an operator's, or has had one in the past. The building is, as you know, does have some history of nuisance, and Dr. Tillman can speak a little bit more about that. I'll leave that up to him. But they don't intend to serve food right now. They may add it on later if they hire a cook. She's in the process of applying for a license with the health department. I believe they already have an occupancy permit at this time. They want to start operating as early as November 1st. We also discussed hookah usage and vaping, so they are applying for a vaping device license along with and tobacco and cigarette. And I did inform her that the state law on indoor smoking prohibits any smoking indoor, and that includes hookah that uses tobacco, which is what she was stated that they would be using. So that would not be permitted. So even though you have a license, even if you sell it in the bar, you would not be able to use it inside the bar, and you don't have a patio or anything like that. So that would be difficult, I guess, almost impossible, for you to allow customers to use that legally. Those are the issues that we discussed.
Thank you.
And then Sergeant Tillman.
Sergeant Tillman, please.
Just many of the things that have been brought up already. And Attorney Arn, obviously, with the parking and everything like that, the history behind, the establishment that's been there before, or the previous establishments, which have had the same issues. Those issues don't seem to get fixed or addressed as time goes on. And then obviously the possibility of straw purchase. It's pretty obvious to me looking at this, that this is the same exact drawing, first of all, 100% the same exact drawing. So it came from the same person. The mess ups are exactly the same, the handwriting is exactly the same. It's whether it was taken off for that previous application and thrown into this one, I don't know, or if a copy was made and thrown into it, whatever. But it is, when you put them side by side, it's the exact same drawing. So there was some correlation there between whether, again, Mr. Turner is involved in some way, shape, or form. That remains to be seen, I guess, but there is definite correlation between the two applications.
Thank you. Yes.
No question. Okay, so just looking at this Good Neighbors report, Mr. Turner, who claims he's not involved, came in August with another person who applies for a license, but yeah, he's not involved. Then came in September with a different person, but not involved, but applying for someone for a license. That's pretty accurate, but still not involved. Air quotes. Can you tell me who owned the previous establishment that we were having issues with?
Duos?
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head, I can't remember those gentlemen's names. The one was from Milwaukee,
So
is that correct?
the owner's name is Mr. Fidelis Wagner, but he was leasing it to the person who was operating Dual. Previous to that, it was Booth R&D, and that was operated under his name. Yes.
When did that shut down?
Duos?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember. I know the history. I'm just trying to.
6 months ago?
Yeah,
Something along those lines, if I remember correctly.
Underage drinking.
It was numerous things, numerous calls for service. The underage drinking thing was basically, I think, the last thing that helped it along, and then there was the
65 people
possibly
in
broken.
there.
Sorry?
65 people in there without anybody, without any.
People after, I think there was after hours, and then there
On
was
a
some
Sunday.
license issues as well
Mhm.
that were going on, pardon their license issues.
They left the
weren't there.
bar unattended.
Yeah, on
They
a
were on
Sunday.
premises.
It's all coming back.
Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you, all the call.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, this was a nice place to go. I even went there a few times in my younger days. But the last 3 operators out of there have had nothing but numerous police problems. And most of our police resources have been spent there. And I just can't in good conscience, vote to support another bar going there without the parking and stuff like that. Nothing against you, ma'am, but we just gotta, we can't keep having these problems. And I don't see them going away with the lack of parking and other things going on over there. So I'll be, voting to deny.
Yes.
So, Ms. Lacy, it troubles me to hear, and I don't know, we had an applicant who, I think their item is still like deferred or waiting to come back before us, where the owner had her write out this business plan, but yet she sat just like you're sitting before us. And what was proposed on the paper just caused a lot of concerns and question, and unfortunately, she was the one sitting there, and it was her name attached to it, and she had to face our line of questioning and put her in a very, you could tell, she sat there awkwardly, right? And it's like, you know, if this is something you're gonna put your name to, and, you know, with this level of question, with there's drawings coming before us, it makes us then, and I don't think, you wanna be in a position where we question your integrity, because you're the one sitting here before us, right? And you understand that you're gonna now be attached to whatever comes down, you know, whether it's, and it could be in a sense, you know, I don't know this Turner, Mr. Turner, you know, why wouldn't he be before us? If this truly is an effort and the will and a heart of somebody who wants to bring a business in Racine, you know, why did they shove you in front of them? And is it because this is a nuisance area? You know, I don't know. You know, this all now becomes speculation. You know, why does there seem to be this sense of deception? And we're not in a position where we should be having the detectives do work, right? I mean, that's not what it is. We're here to support. If somebody wants to invest in a business in this community, I want to applaud it, but I want to put it on them like this is a privilege with alcohol. We got to make sure that with the limited information we get, that we get the most integritable person before us, because now they're holding a privilege that not many of us can do, but they can cause so much discourse and disruption by or abusing that privilege, right? And so then it's on our backs, and I take my job extremely serious. And so, you know, I guess then I hold that standard on whoever comes before us. So, I mean, I don't know if you're feeling it, but I'm feeling the direction this is going. I don't know, and this is Attorney New would have to come in, because the vote is gonna be to deny, more than likely. But if it needs to be, if there's a withdrawal, right, because I think if there's a deny, you have to wait a year before reapplying. You can on this one?
And withdraw once you're here, am I correct?
Okay, okay, never mind. I was trying to give you a way out here, right? Just because what I'm lacking seeing, you know, or give you a different option to come back in a different way, right? If you're not you, whomever. But what I needed to see is, you know, somebody that's bringing forth a business has done the due diligence in there to address actually what has happened in the area. You know, that's what I needed to see, not just any old business plan that can pop up in, you know, anywhere. This is popping up right there, right? So address, you know, have a business plan that fits that spot and the concerns in that spot, and that's what I don't see. This other stuff causes concern because we need to start our relationship right off the bat on good terms. You need to be able to respect us, and you need to know that we're here for you, and then vice versa, coming around. So, you know, if there's cause of concern that there's some deception going on, you know, I don't want that to be on your back. You know, if it's on somebody else's back, don't wear it, right? So, but right now you're before us, so now you have to wear it, right? So, I mean, that's where the vote comes, because your name's attached to this. With that, I'm making a motion to deny.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're sorry. Our next item is 087524, communications sponsored by myself on behalf of the city clerk's office, submitting an application for a change of agent with a Class B fermented malt beverage and intoxicating liquor license for Cafiana LLC, DBA Marco's Neighborhood Bar, located at 3001 Douglas Avenue, Marco Lazovic? Lazarovich. Thank you for coming forward. Attorney Arndt, thanks for swearing Ms. Lazovic in.
You raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you
I do.
God.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you pretty much the same questions that I asked the last applicant. Could you share your business plan, hours of operation, staffing, experience, things of that nature? Because you're actually asking for a change of agent here.
Yeah, well, the main reason we're doing it is because my dad was the agent, but he got cancer, so he's it's a little bit of a tough scenario, but, I mean, I've been bartending and around all the bars for, at this point, like, 7 years-ish. I was in school for, like, 4, so it's kind of off and on when I'd leave, but, I mean, nothing's gonna be changing. The bar opens 2 p.m. every day till 2 a.m., dead days it closes sooner, but he's mostly there most of the time, kind of managing the schedule and the workers, but like I said, nothing's really gonna be changing at all. It's just a precautionary matter in case, you know, God forbid something happens bad to my dad to get ahead of that. But, I mean, like I said, for 5, 6, 7 years, I've been by my dad's side the whole time, kind of doing everything he's doing, helping him out, but of course, he's the agent, so.
Yes, sir.
Done?
Yeah.
I just know his dad owns 2 bars actually, the Neighborhood Bar and Marco's.
Okay.
And there hasn't been really a lot of problems at these places. They've been run good, stuff like that. And, I support these guys. I've talked to them off and on for the last couple of months, so wanted to say, I support them.
Thank you. Is there anything from the attorney or the police department? Alder Caprian, please.
Who is he?
He's, the manager mostly at, Marco's,
Okay.
formerly known as Cafana.
Sorry to hear about your father.
So I'm good.
Yeah. It sounds like, there's a rallying around just to support whatever responsibilities are out there, to take some of maybe the weight, the responsibilities off, so there can be a shift in focus and help.
Yeah, for quite a while, I've been doing everything he was doing. He's at home all the time. He can't really, he's gotten better health-wise, but
Yeah.
he's still to the point where his legs don't really carry him, so I pretty much do everything, and I've been doing everything for 4 months at this point. It's not something new where it's I'm getting tossed over my head. I've been doing this. It's just to put it on paper.
Yeah. That's a lot of responsibility to take on, and then you're holding the,
It came quick, but I'm doing it well. I'm doing everything I can. It's my full-time job. Straight out of college right to this, but doing what I gotta do.
wow. That's very powerful, and it's, you're displaying a big piece of your character, and, that's a lot that you're carrying. So I recognize that. I do want to make a statement now that you're carrying this responsibility. I, as being the alder, I don't think any longer, but for a good portion of the time in the area of the Neighborhood Bar, and I've heard from Marco's that we've had a lot of complaint of allowing smoking in the establishment. So, just so you know, I've just been, somebody who's been a representative for a while, that has been some complaints. I don't like hearing that. I hate the smell of it. Alder Pete, I'm sitting here smelling it, but calling you out. So I just want to say, please nip that in the bud. Now it's going to be on your back, right?
It has been. Marco's never was smoking. Neighborhood, back when my dad was still doing it, we got a warning. He was a big smoker. It's why he got cancer, but I don't, and it stopped a while ago at
Good to hear.
Neighborhood.
Great to hear. Thank you for that, and just thank you to your commitment to that too. And again, I just applaud what you're taking on, and I recognize that, you know, you're a bit of a Superman at the moment right now. And
Thank you, it's a lot, but,
yeah, but know you're human as well.
yeah.
I move to approve.
Second.
I'll recall, wait a minute.
You can have
Okay.
communication on the motion.
Oh, no, it's just, question, you guys were looking for, did you get all your permits turned in? You guys wanted, for, music, for dancing and stuff, did you get all that stuff turned in?
We were gonna do this first, so that.
Oh, you could have done it all at one time, that's why I asked that. We can't amend that either, can we?
No.
Okay, well, you guys will have to come back, I was trying to help you.
No worries.
He likes to visit us.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any, all in favor, please say aye.
All right,
Opposed? Motion carries, and as Alder Caprillion pointed out, what you're doing is commendable. Says a lot about your character. Good luck.
Thank you.
And to your
have a
father.
good one.
Definitely.
See you guys in a couple weeks.
Take care.
Okay, our next item is 058124, communication sponsored by myself on behalf of the Racine Police Department for the licensing premises report.
Just your normal, issues, couple of fights, nothing major as far as that goes. The one thing, most notable probably is, overdose at, Double Vision outside the bar on 21st. They did, look at their, surveillance footage, and they did see the actual person actually dig into his pocket and take it out of his pocket and take it. It was later found to be fentanyl. They transported him to the hospital. He was breathing but lethargic, and then, they submitted a warrant recommendation for him for being in possession of fentanyl. So, he wasn't in any condition to be arrested, so they write out a recommendation to the district attorney's office for a warrant to be issued for him, and then it goes into their hands from there. Fight at Michelle's, they were gone by the time officers got there. Large crowd outside of Taste of Soul after bar hours. Rogers, another fight. And then, another fight at Kayla's. They were gone by the time they got there. Same thing at Sports Pub was where the, bartender called in for us to go there and, disperse the crowd that was there after she closed up. And, another fight. Another crowd at Taste of Soul on the 30th. And then you see that there's nothing entered under October 5th. That was a mistake. That shouldn't have been in there. I double checked it. That was, not sure why that got.
I got a question to ask about, I mean, do we ever give out any citations to people outside? I mean, I know we don't have the police personnel, but
Outside of,
well, Taste of Soul, where these problems keep happening. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I know exactly what's going on over there, but it's hard when there's no kind of citations given to the people. I mean, I know a lot of these people don't even go into any place. They're just out to cause problems.
I can't speak for them specifically, but I can tell you that from my experience over the years, that they would, if there's somebody specifically that they can pick out of the crowd that's the loudest, most boisterous, in the butt at the problem, that's the person that they usually latch onto, and then that person would usually end up getting arrested or cited. If it's a large crowd, and it's just people there, I'll just try to push them along. So usually if we show up, they'll start dispersing, which you see from many of the past reports, that happens a lot. Show up, they see that we're there, they know what's going to happen if they do something specifically that would draw our attention, and at that point, they all start to disperse. But it is, you send 3, 4 officers there, and they're there for half hour, an hour, just watching people, making sure that nothing happens. There have been some citations issued down there, if I remember correctly, not in any of these calls, for people fighting or people that, causing a disturbance, so they got disorderly conduct,
Okay,
like that.
okay, thank you much appreciated.
Any other questions of the committee?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I still have to ask about, I asked item 087724. Is there any, communication sponsored by myself requesting any consideration, any formal expression of concern or other actions of pursuant? I don't see how we would have any, but you have any expressions of concern? Still have to ask.
Not that's appropriate for here.
Okay, seeing none, we have exhausted our, yes.
A motion to be filed today.
Motion, I'm
So
sorry,
moved.
have a motion, a second?
Second.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Motion carries. We are officially adjourned.